live right now, and I'm getting the Instagram feed live, and we'll be set up there in just a second. But welcome, everybody. My name is Stuart Takahara. I'm the Vice President of Membership here at the Long Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. And of course, we are very excited to welcome Matt Bartos from the Figure Agency back again. We have been doing a series of marketing seminars or workshops and podcasts. If you haven't had a chance to hear about those, you can go back and you listen to them wherever you get your podcast. So Matt, welcome back to the Catalyst. Good to have you here.
It's great to be back. I appreciate it. The first two we did, I thought were great. It's nice to have these opportunities to kind of drill down on smaller topics and really start to pull them apart. And I hope that's helping your audience.
Yeah, I hope so too, because we're focusing this series on small business marketing, things that you can do to tighten up your messaging, tighten up your brand, and trying to make sure that you are getting what needs to be told in front of who needs to hear it. And part of that is what we're going to be talking about today, decluttering your business messaging. You can't be everything to everyone. Why can't you be? Why can't you be everything to everyone?
It's a great question. I think it's a perfect question for a podcast.
Yes.
I think that when businesses start out, you want to conquer the world, right? And so in order to, you're trying to attract customers and you're trying to get people under your tent. And you want to welcome everybody and everything under that tent, because in your mind, it's all about, hey, I got to get revenue going, from day one. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that's not really the case. And when you do that, when you sort of make that effort, you tend to, again, want to be everything to everyone. If someone comes to you with problem A, and the business that you're setting up, can help problem A, that's awesome. But you've also got another customer that comes with problem A2, A3, A4, problem B, problem Z, and you don't want to say no, right? I think that's the other component of like owning a business, is that you never really want to say no to a customer. You always want to serve, and you want to, build that relationship with that customer. Any opportunity that you have to do that is a great one. Yeah. And in an effort to do that, you can overextend yourself into areas that you're outside of your, it's outside of your expertise. It's outside of what your business can actually offer. And a lot of times that will set up a dangerous precedent where you are over-promising and under-delivering, which is a death sentence for any business.
Yeah, I get the part where you're trying to overpromise, where you're trying to stretch. You got this thing, you got this person you're talking to, and you're like, yeah, I think I can do that. I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I'm going to take on this project, or yes, I'm going to do this. And then you end up being bad at it, and everyone has a bad experience because it's not up your wheelhouse. But let me ask you a question. Like, let's take a restaurant, for example. If there was a restaurant that opened and I say, who's your target market? Who are you trying to reach? I've gotten answers. This is true. I've gotten answers where they go, oh, everybody who eats is my customer. And it's like, well, kind of. Dig into that a little bit for me. Why are they wrong? Because they're a restaurant, they serve food. But why is that dangerous with that kind of thinking?
Again, because you're trying to service every person that has an appetite and doesn't have an appetite, which is a massive audience to try and tackle. And there are nuances in every audience. And, if you are, you're talking about, let's take a restaurant concept example of a sports bar. So, a sports bar that serves food, like a pub, if you will, that caters to a specific type of customer. That caters to a customer that's interested, obviously, in sports. And that could break down into much more detail too. You may want to be a football forward establishment, or, you want to address multiple sports because you've got multiple screens and all these other things. But, if you are, if you're trying to reach outside that, and now you're trying to reach business clients, like people who are having corporate lunches. Oh, come to my sports bar with your corporate lunch is probably not a direction you want to go. It isn't that you would turn that down if someone approached you, hey, can we use your party room for that? But it's not where your focus actually is, and it's not the audience you're trying to go after.
It makes
So
that
I think it's
great
important
point.
to focus.
You were talking about the sports bar before, and it reminds me of one of our members here at the chamber, the Watch Me Sports Bar over by Second and PCH. They are specifically a woman's focused sports bar. They show only women's events. It's women run. That's their niche. So if you're
Yeah.
looking for something else, no, you're going to find somewhere else to go. But this is a way that exactly what you're going to get. You're going to be with like-minded people, and you're going to have a better experience. And that's where I think that back in the day, there's this saying that I used to learn a long time ago. They say the riches are in the niches, where you want to just take care of this one demographic so well, you don't need everybody else. You don't need to chase it because you've knocked down this particular demographic, or you've locked down this particular area of people.
It allows you to take your branding from everything to everybody down to that specific example. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I noticed I got a couple chamber emails. There was one about that bar, and I think one of your women's group was meeting there as well. And
yeah, they're doing a Galentine's.
That was my right, and that was my introduction to that place. And it's very specific. They have a very specific point of view, and the brand it caters to that crowd and that audience. It's not that they're not welcoming like that. I think that's another thing too, is like, we want to be specific here that this is not, by focusing and shaping your brand towards a specific audience, it doesn't mean that you're not inclusive. It's not, I'm sure if I walk through the door, they're not going to be like, boo, and get out. I don't know. Maybe they will, because for whatever reason.
They would not do that. I can promise you that.
Right. But you know what I mean? Like, they'll welcome all, but from a brand perspective and from a marketing perspective, now they've narrowed their focus to where they can be very specific in the messaging that they choose for, to reach, a female demographic. And then the different stratification in there, younger sports fans, older sports fans, people who are on the, not necessarily a sports fan, but they have a bunch of friends who are, and they just want to come and have a good time and be entertained.
And another great reason to narrow your focus is you're going to find it easier to market to them and to advertise to them and to reach them and to be able to deliver exactly what they're looking for. If you're so this is what I say about like restaurants. We were using that example earlier, like a buffet. You go to a Vegas buffet, or you go to any one of these buffets, and they've got a section for Chinese food, for example, and you've got barbecue, you got salads and desserts, and you got, they're trying to be all things to all people. And that sometimes it's fine and that works. But the quality of any of those foods is not great. If I'm going to a buffet and I'm going to spend $70 like it costs now at a Vegas buffet or something like that, or something, it's like, I don't want a lot of everything. I want something good. I'm looking for that bone-in filet with a great ambiance and a great thing with a great bottle of wine. I'm not looking for just surface level, whole lot of everything. I'm going to spend this money and I want something very specific, and I'm willing to pay for that.
And you could expand that into like a craft cocktail bar, right?
Yes.
So a bar that specializes, right? So some bars are just, they specialize in the ambiance, right? Quote unquote dive bars, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's the vibe, it's the history of the place and whatnot. Then there's some bars that are, more specifically catered to craft cocktail drinkers, right? And they're hyper focused on that. They invest a lot of money in having a broad range of, all different types of alcohols and different programs that they offer. Or maybe you're a wine bar and you're not about cocktails, and that's another sort of specificity that that I think's important. You as a business or as a brand, when you're building that brand, you really need to, as you start out, and we talked about this in the previous episode, when you start out, it's very important to find that niche and find that little segment that to hyper focus on, because ultimately when you start your business, you're starting it from a niche perspective. I, you know, uh, I used an example in the previous episode of, I have this problem. I needed a tool to fix this problem. I looked at the market. There wasn't really a good tool to do that. So I went out and I made my own tool, and here it is. And it's for this specific problem, this specific need. And this is what I'm going to focus on, because I'm not the only one that has this problem. And there's a lot of people who may not even realize they have that problem. And now I am introducing it to them, and here's a solution for it. And they can be like, oh yeah, great. I'm gonna patronize that brand. It runs across every type of business, whether it's the restaurants we've been talking about, bars, or, a product oriented business or whatever. Mm-hmm. That focus is important. And so what that focus enables you to do is, it allows you to focus your messaging. You message it. You mentioned it earlier about, being able to focus your marketing more, right? A big component of your marketing is the words you choose to market your product and to get your story out there, your business, your brand story out there. When businesses try to be everything to everyone, that messaging oftentimes becomes very cluttered. And as we've talked about before in the other parts of these sort of workshop podcasts, is, the importance of consistency and clarity. So as a consumer, any place I come into contact with your brand, whether it's a single restaurant, brick and mortar restaurant, or it's a product where, I'm going to buy it at the store or buy it on your e-commerce site, mm-hmm. The messaging should be consistent, and it should be the same wherever it is I come into contact with it. Because I want to create that as a brand owner. You want to create that familiarity, so that wherever the customer comes into contact with you, they're seeing the same things, they're reading the same things. The product that they're interested in is described the same way if they buy it in the store or they come across the website or a review. All of that language is the same. And so that's kind of what brought us to this episode today, was about decluttering your messaging.
And we're going to
getting a chance to evaluate that.
And we're going to get into that. I just want to remind people, if you're watching, we're doing this live. If you have questions along the way about what it means to declutter, why it's important, or if we're saying something that you want more clarity on, just go ahead and put your question in the comment section, whether you're watching us on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and then we'll be able to see that and get to those questions as we're going through. So don't be afraid. Punch in your comments if you have any questions. We'll be able to get to them. So as we talk about decluttering, I might look and go, wow, I need to really look and say, I did lose focus a little bit. We kind of are doing little things. Why did we even add this one thing? We don't even have that product anymore, or that's so outdated, or we haven't sold this thing for all long. So where do you start? Because so many customers, so many businesses, they just keep thinking, oh, more is better, more is better, more is better. Very rarely do you see people start removing products or services, because people think, if I remove products or services, I'm going to make less money. But what's the first step in trying to get your mind out of that cycle?
The point you just made about, if I remove something, I'm going to lose this money. I think another way, a way to reframe that is, if I keep this, how much money am I going to lose keeping this as part of the part of the business? Because it's outside of our brand. It's not, connecting with customers the way it should be. You know what I mean? So, taking things away doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing part of the business. It means that you're actually, making it better, making it streamlined. It's like pruning a tree, right? So the first place to start in terms of decluttering your business is to organize it. So, a way to visualize it is a garage that's completely full of junk. So you got a garage, it's full of things, and your goal is to park your car in the garage. So you got to go through and you got to figure out everything that's in there, and you got to organize it before you can start, like we just said, sort of removing the things that aren't working.
So what are the things they need to look at? Is it products? Is it slogans? Is it taglines? What are the things that they could start removing from there?
So
Organizing.
getting organized, I think there's four sort of categories to look at. The first would be your top line brand messaging. So your brand, your brand name, your origin story, if you've got a mission statement, your description, your one line tag, all that stuff. Take all of that information you have and assemble it in a single document. That's it. Just top to bottom, just make it very clear, like, okay, this is the language you're using.
Mhm.
Then if you sell products or services, go through all your products or go through all your services and do the same thing. Build a document, put all of that copy information in there, right? So your name, your product description, if you have volumes or dosing information, ingredients lists, instructions for use, your packaging copy, stuff like that. Another one would be after that would be to go to your website, right? Your marketing platform. What is the thing that you sell through? Go through that website and do the same thing. Page by page, scroll by scroll, take all that copy and put it down on a document off the website. And the last thing would be your social platforms. So I'm not talking about your posts, but basically kind of the top line, description and things like that you have on your social platforms, put that in a document as well. Now you've got those 4 documents. You can start to go through, and what the beauty of doing that is now you can apply all of the grammar tools that we have available to us, all of the AI tools that we have available to us right now to begin to analyze and streamline all that information so that you can start to see, all right, we're saying this about this product here, but I noticed on the website we're saying this about this product. Well, those things don't match, and they actually should. Or we're saying that about it on our social media, right? And they all don't quite match up. So this allows you to compare all these things and begin to start to see inconsistencies. Again, we talked about creating that consistent experience for your consumer so that wherever they come into contact with the brand, they have the same experience and all those touches are repetitive.
And that consistency is even just as important now because AI is starting to check for consistency between platforms, check between consistencies of social media pages and all that when it starts to look at you and perhaps even recommend you. That's something that's starting to come up as well too. So when AI looks,
Yeah.
they want to see a consistent message across all platforms. And so getting this part is especially important for that.
Yeah, we as an example, we were working with a health and beauty company, and they had an e-commerce site. We're selling health and beauty products through that e-commerce site. But then they also had, they have all this beautiful packaging. So we analyzed everything, and we did this. We did the exercise, put everything in these documents, kind of compared and contrast, and realized, and they were shocked by this, that some of their packaging, the volume, the actual weight and the volume of the products themselves was actually wrong between the two things. It was off by an ounce in some cases.
Wow.
And so, that can really create a snowball effect for a consumer. If they go and they buy a product and it says this is 7 ounces, and they're thinking, okay, great, I see the value of this cost for that 7 ounces. And they get it and it says 6 or it says 5.5. Now all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, what were you selling me?
Right.
And that's a detail, but add that across, 10,000 customers you have a month, that really starts to add up. And so decluttering your information and getting it all consistent is a major component towards, brand familiarity and brand acceptance and getting and creating those brand loyalists that you really want to build your customers into.
Mm-hmm. So once you get organized and you have your documentation, what do you do with it?
So this is where we get into the actual cleanup, and we talked about this when we introduced it. But this is where you can start to use your grammar tools. You can use the AI tools to begin to do a couple things. First is to remove repetition. So if you're repeating phrases or sentences, sometimes within or similar phrases or sentences within a description, you talk about You describe the product in one sentence, and then all of a sudden, the second sentence, you're kind of saying the same things. And now all of a sudden, you've created a bunch of words that you don't need. So removing clunky wording and run-on sentences and things like that, that's a good move.
You're, you're just
Reduce
really,
your descriptors.
yeah, you're really just
Go ahead.
editing, right? You're really just
Yeah,
trying to say, hey, I used 20 words. Let me see if I can get it down to 10 words or 12 words. Just get rid of the
yeah,
fillers and let's get consistent. Let's, nowadays people's attention spans are like, a little bit.
yeah.
So a lot of times in
So
those areas, you don't need these big words and all this kind of extra text.
and also another component of that is reducing your descriptors, right? So your
Yes.
adjectives, because a lot of times, you believe in your product and your product does all these great things. And while that may be true, the consumer doesn't necessarily need all that information. What they need is the three major benefits of that product or that service. And so reducing the amount of descriptors that you use to describe that product is a great component of decluttering. Reduce your word counts. So, when you get into specific example of the descriptions that they allow you for your social media platforms, right? So, your brand has a social media account and you're given 140 words or less or whatever it is, 140 characters to describe your brand. Start reducing your word counts where you can. It doesn't mean that, everything that you write only needs to be 3 words. The consumer needs more than that, but they don't need 500 words when you can describe it in 100. So reducing your word counts. The final component of that cleanup is what I call going full GSP: grammar, spelling, and punctuation. Nail that, because there's nothing more embarrassing, I think, for a brand than when you misspell a word or you use the wrong word and you were intending something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it all the time. It's a really difficult thing. It's always the least amount of fun we get to when we have to, like, we're almost at the finish line of, releasing some new collateral, is making sure that our grammar is all correct, that our spelling is all correct, and that our punctuation is all working, and we're not using exclamation points in every sentence because we're so excited about every single part of our product and brand and we have to get it out there. Like, use that exclamation point in the most efficient place possible. This is where going full GSP makes sense.
All right. So we've gotten organized. We've gone through the GSP. We've got this kind of thing. Everything is looking good. We got rid of all the excess filler words. We've gotten rid of all that kinds of stuff. We've got the meat and potatoes. We've got everything that we need. It's good. It's better, but it's still not perfect, right? What do we do next?
So the next thing would be, I call claim check. So, when you're selling a product or a service, you're going to make claims about what that product or service can do for the consumer. And it's very important to be very upfront and honest about what those claims are. It's easy to get into hyperbole and to begin to, elevate your product or your service to a point where you're adding attributes to it that the consumer doesn't need. B, you're creating more to make unbelievable, right? So you're allowing more room to sow doubt with the consumer. Like, wait a minute, there's no way that roll of paper towels is going to clean up this massive oil spill in my garage. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever. Like, it's important that you check the claims that you're making about your brand or product. And I think you need to do it with an independent, sort of skeptical eye and force yourself to defend each claim you're making. So you want to remove secondary or soft or generic claims. And, because only the strongest should survive. It should be very Darwin in terms of how you approach your claims.
And depending upon what kind of organization you are in or your staff, this is a great area where I think you can have your employees take a look at this and say, is this what we're really doing? Is this what people are coming in here for? Is this what they're calling us about? Get other people, third parties, to be able to look into this. And nowadays, you can even take your new language, put it into like an LLM, like a ChatGPT or a Gemini, and say, compare this new verbiage with what I'm seeing on my website, or what my sales reports are. Are they matching? There's a lot of different ways you can get that objective eye that you were talking about.
Absolutely. And, it is important to, the last point I'll make about claim check is you need to be honest with your consumer. As soon as you're not honest, the person that's going to call you on that the quickest and probably the most detrimental will be the consumer, because they're going to be like, I'm not spending my money on that again because it told me it was going to do this thing for me and it didn't do it, or it didn't do it well, or the build quality was bad on that product or whatever, or it didn't have the durability that they were claiming it to have. And if you're not honest up front with yourself and with your product, you can't really believe it and get behind it enough. And your team can't do that either, enough to convince a consumer to want to purchase it and for them to believe in the purchase and actually, get benefit from it. And ultimately that hurts your brand. That customer is going to go to another competitor who does it better and, doesn't make things up about their product that aren't true.
All right. So we organized. We took everything that we had, we wrote it all down, we have it all organized. We did our cleaning up, we scrubbed and we decluttered all of the things to make our messaging more effective. Now we tested it. We run it through either an LLM, we gave it to our employees, we gave it to some customers, people who know what we do. We've been able to defend all of our claims, the new ones. How do we wrap this up? Like, what's the final thing that we do?
So the last thing we would do is cross-check. In cross-check and apply. So once you've gone through those 3 first steps, you've got everything shaped kind of the way you want it to shape. You feel that there's consistencies across everything. Now it's time to reapply that to those different areas of your brand. On your website, those some of these changes are a little more difficult than others, especially when you're dealing with packaging, right? Because packaging is something that you print. It is something that, you have to buy ahead of time. And so it's very important that you kind of get that right. So I would start with adjusting your website, getting all that language together. I would take your any sort of brand communications you have. So any sort of top levels corporate brand communications, make sure that all that language is consistent and matches kind of what you're saying on your website. Your social platform, again, same thing. Make sure that you've got that consistency there. And then if the packaging takes longer to actually, you got to run through a cycle because you've purchased some packaging already and you got to kind of get that going. Plan ahead for the next round of your packaging purchase. Go through now. This would be the time to go through with your design team or your design staff or whatever it is, and then start to make those adjustments about, all right, we need to change the language on our ingredients list here. We need to, do these things, make that checklist and go through it. If you have a great product description, make sure it's the same on your packaging as it is on your e-commerce product page, as it is on your marketing materials. If you're using a short brand description on your website, make sure it's the same on your social media platforms, your letterhead. Make sure that it all reads the same. Again, to go back to our larger point of creating that consistency for your consumers so that wherever they come into contact with your brand, they see the same things, they read the same things, and it's all reinforcing these positive brand values that you want them to absorb and have get to their buying decision, their confident buying decision much quicker. Mm-hmm. This is the whole point of decluttering and making your word use much more efficient.
A lot of people say less is more, and I think this is exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And we're all guilty of it. I used way too many words, I think, to describe a lot of this stuff. I would love to be more efficient with my words, and I'm working on it, but it's very hard to self-edit as you're actually using the words. But you're right. I mean, even in making my notes for this thing, I went from, 3 pages worth of notes down to 2 pages, down to 1 page, down to a couple, sentences, so that I could try and, I could make that effort to get more efficient with my words so that, from a brand perspective, from a brand, I am trying to,
Mhm.
be more efficient and give you, give you the potential consumer an easier thing to latch onto. That's all.
And that's really all it is by using less words, being able to make that connection right away, people will be able to latch on, people will be able to understand what you're doing, how you're doing it, or why you're doing it, and how or why it could fit into your, into their business, or why should I buy it? They can, if they can get it just like that, they go, oh, I see it, you know,
Yeah.
using
You had
more
mentioned,
words. Yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Sorry. You had mentioned having experience in the casino industry,
Yes.
and having the audit, the difficulty of convincing people to lose their money to your business, right? So you
Yeah.
got to be very, I would imagine you have to be very, very specific and very careful about your word choice and how you describe these things and how you want to bring people in through the doors. Did you, over your time doing that, was there an experience you had with issues with your messaging to where, wait a minute, we're saying this thing here and we should be saying this, or whatever? Are there
So
examples that an
Wh-
example?
when I took over that job as head of marketing for a casino, I looked at what we had been doing in the past, and I looked at what our competitors were doing, and trying to say, where is the overlap? Like, what are we saying that our competitors are saying? Because I don't want to compete with them on gambling. That's what we do, but that's not why people I want. That's not why I want people to choose us. Because you can gamble anywhere. We all have the same games, the same tables, the same things.
Hmm.
What is it that we have that the others don't? What do we do better than everyone else? And that's where I started changing the focus, and changing our messaging. We never talked about blackjack. We never talked about poker. We never talked about gambling in our ads. We talked about the experience. We talked about the way that you'll be treated, and the feeling you're going to have. We, and one of our big outdoor campaigns, and this got actually very, very controversial, even within the casino and upper management, the executive team. We ran an outdoor campaign where we didn't even show a blackjack table or a poker table, no poker chips, nothing even reflecting the casino itself, you know.
Yeah.
And we used slogans that didn't even refer to gambling or payouts or progressive jackpots or anything like you would normally see. We had casino in our name. People knew what we did, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to show what you're going to feel, who you're going to meet, how you're going to experience being at our casino versus our competitors' casino. So that was a
Yeah.
really interesting thing, and it went very well, but it took a lot of convincing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny you mentioned a lot of convincing, right? So that means that you're going to have to reach out to that customer multiple times. You know what I mean? In order to sort of get your message across and get that point across, right? And get that, convey that emotion that this consumer will be able to entertain themselves with. They want to come back for more as they come. So that's like multiple touches. And so it's very important to realize here that that's why you want to declutter. And you want that messaging to be consistent, and you need it to be. The consumer needs it to be. Because we're all busy doing a million different things. We get inundated with, a million different ads from a million different places, a million different messages from a million
Hmm.
different places.
Yeah.
And it's important that if that is the case, and if you as the casino are, going to be reaching out to these consumers upwards of 10, 15, 20 times before they actually are aware of what you're trying to do and may or may not be interested. Every time you reach out to that customer, it should be the same messaging. Like it should be the same cadence of and rhythm in order to, get people to do it. There's when we talk about casinos here in Southern California, Marengo does a lot of advertising.
Hmm.
And, they they've always been very consistent about what their messaging is. It's very, it's very sure. I just remembered, and I forgot about this. So when I first started working, I started very young working in the motion picture side of the business, and um, I got hired to do. I was doing camera assisting, and I got hired to do a series of commercials for a riverboat uh, casino thing down on the Ohio River. And so we ran into the same thing that you actually were just describing. When we get there, we're thinking, okay, we're going to shoot a bunch of, you know, dice throwing. It's going to be a
Yeah.
bunch of people screaming around a table and stuff like that. And then when we got there, we realized we started looking at the agency creative, and there was no gambling. There was there's no shots of the gambling floor or anything like that, because we found out it was against state law to show any kind of gambling.
That's interesting.
So, and we were going to spend 4 days on this on this boat, and we're like, what are we doing? So it ended up being 4 days of exactly what you were talking about, which is, the fun that everyone was having. There was a bar, and there was they had DJ sets, and there was music, and there was a lifestyle thing that they were trying to promote, and that's what we were there to create. But sometimes as a brand, you're going to run up against hurdles like that. And that's where it's very important that your messaging is simple, it's efficient, it's not cluttered. And, so you can reach those customers, because they may have this perception of like, wait a minute, you're a casino. Why am I not seeing the cards and why am I not seeing the game?
There's a certain implication. I'm an Italian restaurant. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to have a spaghetti and meatball plate, but what I don't know is your pasta fresh? Is your sauce homemade every day? Or is it pasta homemade? So those might be some of the things that are going to set you apart from somebody else, or from this point or that point, or whatever the case may be. So finding out exactly what you do. Yeah, you don't need to list everything. There's certain assumptions that are going to be made. And so focus on the things that aren't assumed, or if you're going against the grain, focusing on that would be an interesting way to go too. So
yeah, for sure. And it's very important to practice these things too. Like, this isn't something that you just kind of do once and then you're like, well, we cleaned everything up, it's awesome. Because over time, as we've said before, brands evolve, the messaging needs to change, the brand itself may need a renewal or a refreshment after a period of time, because the business has become, it services the same core thing, but now it's kind of grown into some other areas and things like that. So at that point, definitely you want to reevaluate all that messaging, go through these steps, make sure that everything's consistent, and then it's a way to kind of keep your brand in check as you move forward.
We've been talking with Matt Bartos from the Figure Agency about decluttering your brand. As we wrap up here, Matt, is there anything else that you want to add? I know we hit those 4 big key points: organize, clean up, claim check, and cross check, which is a great way to remember all the steps that you need to do. Is there anything else before we log off here that you want to leave our audience with?
Authentic brevity.
So I like that one. Say that one more time.
Authentic brevity.
Yes.
So using your brand's voice authentically. So, if you're that the women forward sports bar that you mentioned, and forgive me,
Watch Me Sports Bar.
Watch Me Sports Bar, right? Using an authentic voice to communicate that brand aspect out to potential consumers, and then also the your loyalists that are out there, but have some brevity about it. You don't want to you can be authentic about the thing that you're saying, or the voice that the brand is using, but if you're using way too many words and you're sending out mixed messages and confusing things, all of a sudden, I'm not interested in coming to watch sports at your bar to hang out with my female friends. Like, it's not going to land with that audience. So
There
authentic brevity, I think, is a very important component, and it's something that we, try and get our clients to.
and their name is Watch Me Sports Bar. Their tagline is celebrating women's sports. I mean,
Yeah.
that tells you everything that you need to know right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see how much they worked on that. And whether that, because sometimes, especially with a tagline, it can be the hardest thing that you come up with. And it's usually something we do later, much later in the process of brand development. Or it can be something that kind of clicks in the beginning, and then you go through the brand process in order to keep, and you realize that as you go through that, you're reinforcing that initial thought of what that tagline should be. So I'd be interested in what their story is
Yeah, I'll have to
regarding that.
dig some. Maybe we'll get her on the Catalyst at some point in the very near future.
That'd be great.
Alrighty, Matt. Well, thank you again for hanging out with us again, and we look forward to you in our next episode here, The Catalyst. I'm hoping that people are getting the ideas about how each of these little pieces come together to be able to make your brand, your business more on target, more profitable, more focused, and hence more profitable.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's the whole point of kind of being able to do this and offer this to, small businesses is to help them get better and get more efficient and make it easier and more enjoyable to own the business and run the business itself. So,
alrighty, Matt, till next time, thanks for joining us here on The Catalyst. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and to watch. This episode of The Catalyst Live will be edited down and put up onto a podcast here in the next few days. So if you missed a section, you can be able to check it out there. Matt, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Got it. Thank you.